I'm here with graphic novelist John Macy, who has recently released his new graphic novel, Juna Barnes. How are you doing today?
Doing really good. Seattle for another reading, and really like it up here. Really like it.
Oh,
I'm
definitely.
actually located in.
What do you like about the Northwest, Seattle
It's not
particularly?
hot, and I like the greenery because I live in Oakland, so it's usually dry and hot every day, and so this is a lot more inclusive for being stuck in your room at your desk all day. So yeah.
Definitely. This is my first time interviewing you, and I know you grew up in California. Can you talk a little bit about how you got into being a graphic novelist?
Uh, well, I was doing indie work, really underground zine stuff. And then I moved into magazines. And actually, I was doing a lot of skin magazines, so gay erotic magazines. And I would do a little four-pager in the back of them. And um, it paid well. It was a really good little gig. And then I really wanted to do something a little more literary. So I was adapting a novel called Teleny. It was uh, technically it's an anonymous novel, but it's a lot of people believe, or there's evidence to believe that Oscar Wilde wrote it along with his friends, and they were doing this secret novel back in the 1892. And so I adapted it, and uh, yeah, that won a Lambda, which is damn good.
Right.
Um, so that leveled me up, and uh, then I started to just do long form work, so like 200-page books. And this new one is 320, so it's like um, my longest piece, which I think is kind of, I don't know about you or if you read graphic novels, but there's a certain there's a certain stress people have when they read comic books, and so um, when it gets like over 300 pages, there's kind of a burnout that happens. So I try not to go uh, past that. That's kind of like the limit I've set for myself. So
You mentioned winning the Lambda, and you won the award in 2010. The Lambda Literary Awards, they're also known as the Lammys, are awarded yearly by Lambda Literary to recognize the crucial role LGBTQ plus writers play in shaping the world. What was
yeah.
it like, getting recognition for your work?
Well, the for one, it was in gay erotica, which was very important to me because I think that it's something that should be respected more, and it's part of our lives. It's like the defining part of a gay guy's life. It's what makes us different and other. And so this was a huge validation, and I really like that it's in that category. And they throw this massive party, and it's very impressive. It was in New York, and uh, yeah, for a little cartoonist like me, you know, being part of that and actually winning was something that really meant a lot to me. So
I guess after winning the Lambda, you produced your own comic book series, Fearful Hunter, which started, I guess, as an active protest against California's Proposition 8. Can you talk a little bit about that?
yeah, I'm pretty shy. I don't I don't march. So I do it in my own way. So what I did was I did a book called Fearful Hunter that was I wanted to show how everybody was during this whole like Defensive Marriage Act. They were just really coming down on us, saying that, well, why bother? You're just all sluts, and you just um, you're just so frivolous. Your relationships are not as important as ours. So I wanted to show the other side. I mean, there's a lot of sex out there, and anywhere on the internet there's gay sex, but I wanted to show how it was, what's it like to lose a lover, that you love. And so I set it in a fantasy world just because I wanted to like take the politics out of it. So I set in a fantasy world, and I had these like wolf spirit people who mate for life. All right, so they're gay men who are biologically predisposed to monogamy. So they find their mate. That's it. There's no other. And it was something that was just sort of unheard of, in the gay erotic comics world. So, um, and it was people really liked it. It was something that they liked the feeling of it. I thought it was going to be too tame for them, but no, they approved. So, but the thing is, I was also doing a lot of shows like at Comic-Con in San Diego,
Okay. Yeah, I
and there's
love
this
the Comic Con.
great, yeah, I love, but it's like in the early days, because I've been going since 90,
Okay.
91, and before Prop 8, people would run past our booth, you
Okay.
know. So, but after Prop 8, there was a lot of people who they would just come up and they say, okay, well, I'm not scared. I'll look at these books, and they start talking to us, and they actually some of them privately told me they at first they won, they blocked us from being married, and then the world didn't end, and it was they realized they did a bad thing.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of uh, people, I don't know, saying that, yeah, they voted for it, but then they regretted it. And I don't know. So it was a big change. And then after that, um, it really, the boundaries came down, and now we get like parents that come up. There'll be like these dads that come up, and then they're like, I need a comic for my gay son, and I'm not going to lose him, and we get really intense, and we'd all start crying, and it, I don't know. I think that maybe the bad parts of Prop 8 was what was needed to make a line, and then we could move on. Like, I'm not sure, but that seems to be my experience of it. So,
Being in this world since, the early 90s, and I feel like, the attitude against how much has it changed since the 90s up till now, and like, what still needs to change as far as like, because I know you talked a little bit about it, you touched on it earlier about your work not getting like, as much like, respected as it deserves, gay erotica.
well, I've been pretty lucky in that I've had publishers take chances on me, and because I don't really fit in the boxes, and so yeah, so Zan, he actually started a publishing company just to publish Teleny, and that was a huge gift to me. And we went on to publish more books and publish a lot of other people's books, and there was a really beautiful moment where people were we were helping young cartoonists get published for the first time, and then they take off after a while. But um, how's it changed? There's a lot more now, but there's also a lot more. You know, there's enough people where we're not huddled together for protection anymore. So now we're all spread out, we're a little safer, and but that has created like more of a fracture to the community. So we're not really in close touch with everybody anymore. It used to be there was just the one booth, and we were there. So um, I think we're losing touch with each other. It's okay, just we're off doing our own things. And I don't see any real downside to it. Um, we're definitely assimilating, and I don't see a downside of that either. You know, um, I mean, it could become, it's weird. You start out invisible and then you become invisible again. It's like I don't know. I don't know the answer to that part of it. I just like personally for myself, I'm more interested in gay history, which I see as something that's not cool anymore. So I'm going to do it. It's that kind of thing.
Your new release, Juna, it's a biographical graphic novel, and it was a lot of like research involved, because this is a historical character. How much research went into like creating this graphic novel?
Yeah, I got to flash the
Yeah, of
cover.
course.
um, yeah, well, the research started a long time ago because I've been obsessed with her for so long. So, I mean, we're talking mid 90s when I started just reading everything about her. And then the book took about 4.5, 5 years. And there was the, the thing about the research is that she was really private and she was really secretive and she burned her letters. She would lie to biographers. She'd tell one biographer one thing and another story to somebody else just to, mess with them. And and all of that came from her trauma. Her trauma as a girl, young girl, and so she grew up in a bohemian cult in the 1890s. It was run by her grandmother. She was the matriarch of the family, and they're free love. So it was very artistic and intellectual, but it wasn't. There was no sexual boundaries. There was incest and stuff, and um, so when she wrote her novels, like the first big novel she did, it's actually 100% true, but everyone thought it was a farce. They thought it was like a joke. And so what I did was, once I realized that, I took her book and I just, treated it as absolute truth. And then I took uh, everything I could read about narcissistic family dynamics and I started like comparing them, and she fit like in every category. It
Wow.
was so the research was hard because she made it hard, but she also really was desperate, I think, to tell her story, but she couldn't because it's frightening. It's scary to open yourself up like that in the 20s and 30s. That was back when
Right.
she yeah, they were there were even like words like lesbian and bisexual didn't exist. It was like you were an invert or you were just sick. So that was the research on just finding out what happened to her as a kid was one thing, and then there was all the visual research of her, the places she lived, how the people dressed, did they have indoor plumbing, so just everything like that. And a lot of the spaces that she lived in and occupied was bombed after World War II. So I'm drawing these pictures of houses at that address, and then it turns out it's not the same house. It was blown up, so they rebuilt it. So I had to go back and try to find images of these spaces, and maybe I didn't. Maybe the story tells itself fine, but I had to know, like I had to get the windows right, just for me. So it was a lot. Let's just say it was a lot.
Yeah, that sounds very painstaking. You know, you've said that Juna inspires you to keep going writing. Could you talk a little bit about like, how much of an inspiration she is? And obviously you've done this biographical graphic novel. Like, what was it about her particularly that inspired you?
Okay, well, she and I are very similar in a lot of ways, you know. She's we both came from artistic households that had narcissistic parents, you know. So there was this weird, you know, I like my punishment when I was bad was to knead the air bubbles out of my mom's clay. So I would just sit there for hours until like my fingers um so you know we was you know just growing up stretching canvases and painting and writing and doing all these things like Juna did, but also at the same time we were not prepared for the outside world. It was this weird um, barrier to they kept you small. They wanted you to shine because it made them look good, but they kept you small so you can't get away. And that's exactly how it was for Juna. Um, you're trapped on a farm with you know these your family, and there's this push me pull you thing. So there was that, and there was also um, just the energetic spark of like when I read her books. Uh, yeah, I tell people I opened it up. Like the first time I held one, I opened it up, and there's this quote says, "A wild princess in a night shift of velvet, howling under a leech." And I'm like, "Oh yes, this is great. I'm loving this." So it's I was her darkness, her vocabulary, the way she was so transgressive. I was just eating that up in my 20s, and I learned a lot more about her personality later. She she was also a recluse. So like when she hit 40, she locked herself in this studio apartment in Manhattan and didn't come out ever again. And I was working on the book during the lockdown. So and I do a lot of method cartooning. So like she wrote in bed, so I had to write in bed. And she drank a lot, so I had, you know, I had to drink a lot. And it was just a lot of trying to get into her head and up in, you know, to the point where when the book was done, I was messed up. She was haunting me. It was she was so deep in my head. I had a I yeah, I needed an exorcist or something. She was like the she haunted me. So she was yeah, we're similar in good ways and we're similar in bad ways. And anytime you do a story about somebody, they're living in your head for years. And like I wanted to do a new book on Francis Bacon, and I just scratched the surface on his life, and I was like, oh no way, I don't want this guy anywhere near me. I mean, he's brilliant, but I can't live with him. It would kill me. So
No, I totally understand that because I'm a method actor. So
okay.
I really get that. Like I think especially with like Juna, she had a very like, horrific life like growing up. And you've kind of touched on that, like, what was something you discovered about her that were disturbed by or like, that maybe did haunt you?
Well, one of the things was when she got older and she became a recluse, and she had a lot of friends who loved her, but she really turned her back on them. And everyone thought, like, I mean, I've been reading academic papers on her for decades, and they all say, oh, well, you know, it was cognitive decline, or it was some, you know, she was afraid, she was anxious. I'm like, no, she wasn't anxious. What she was afraid of was hurting her friends, and she didn't trust herself to not to behave, you know. So it wasn't self-preservation. It was not cutting the last rungs off the ladder. You know, I think she felt guilty. Um, about her bad behavior, and that's what makes her so complex. A lot of people worship her and they revere her,
Yeah.
but I'm calling bullshit. There's a lot of she was messed up, but that makes her like so much more interesting. So,
Yeah, like I feel like tortured souls are like always the best artists. Yo, what's next for you? Like, after Djuana.
okay, well, there's a story I've wanted to do for 30 years now. Uh, it was a short story that I did and in like 92, and it was being looked at by do you remember MTV's Liquid Television?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So that they were looking at this story, and I don't know what happened. I don't know. It didn't. It fell through. Um, but I've always been really attached to it. It's about a cult that is based on Charles Mingus, the jazz composer.
Okay.
So they don't have any technology past the year he died. So it's 1979 for them all the time. So it's muscle cars, jazz, the clothes, um, and early electronica. And I'm really fascinated by the way that they had to create their own equipment.
Yeah.
Like uh, and more and just even aesthetically, like the way the knobs are, the turntables are, and everything. There's all the whole aesthetic of early electronica back in the 60s to 70s. I mean, I spent a week just studying how the cassette tape changed over time, which is where my little crazy brain goes. I just go down the rabbit holes and I have to know. So yeah, it's about Charles Mingus, or the effect he had on his community.
Mm.
But it's definitely fiction. It's totally fiction. So.
That's really cool. Like you mentioned MTV Liquid Television and like they were the birth of Beavis and Butthead for like, people. um, John Macy, man, I really enjoyed speaking with you. I'd love to like, have you back anytime. Where can people check out your work, by Djuana?
Well, I mean, it's definitely, you can start at Amazon. That's the easiest place. This new publisher has been Magic. It's the Magic publisher, and it's everywhere. So pretty much any chain bookstore is going to have it online. They may not have it in person. And uh, yeah, it just came out last week. So I am riding this high of having it's not gay porn. So I can actually, this is the book that my family can say, oh yeah, like I can show it to my kids.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Congratulations, John. I really appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Welcome.